My name's Claire, I'm 32 years old, and let me just say this right now. I never thought revenge would taste this sweet. But to understand how I got there, you need to hear what happened on my very first day as the new manager of an advertising firm in Chicago. Walking into the office that morning, I was nervous but excited. I had worked hard for this position, years of late nights, countless client pitches, climbing every rung of the ladder. This wasn't just another job, it was a chance to finally lead, to show that I had earned every bit of respect I deserved. But not everyone was happy about my promotion. I'll never forget it, barely an hour into the day, as I was getting introduced around, one of the women, her name was Jessica, came strutting over with her oversized iced coffee. She had that smirk plastered on her face, the kind of look that said she already hated me without even knowing me. Before I could even open my mouth, she tripped, at least, that's what she pretended, and the entire cup of coffee spilled down my cream-colored dress. I froze, stunned, hot liquid dripping down my legs, the smell of burnt espresso clinging to me. And then, as if that wasn't humiliating enough, Jessica leaned in close and whispered, loud enough for others to hear. "You deserve it. You're a nobody anyway." Laughter rippled in the background. Some people looked away, pretending they didn't see. No one said a word to defend me. They didn't know who I really was yet, their new boss. I kept my composure, forced a tight smile, and excused myself. Inside, though, I was boiling. That was when I made the decision. By lunchtime, I had called Jessica into my office. She walked in, cocky as ever, expecting maybe a lecture at most. She had no idea that I was about to do the one thing she feared the most. Jessica walked into my office like she owned the place, chin high, that same smug grin tugging at her lips. She didn't even bother to knock, just barged in as though I were the one answering to her. "Yeah, you wanted to see me," she said, tossing her hair over her shoulder. I leaned back in my chair, hands folded neatly on the desk, and let her arrogance settle in the air for a moment. I wanted her to feel comfortable, to think she still held the upper hand. Because in a matter of seconds, the ground beneath her was going to vanish. "Yes, Jessica," I said evenly. "Please, have a seat." She plopped down without hesitation, crossing her legs, acting like this was just another casual chat. She had no clue that the nameplate on my desk, Claire, regional manager, was about to crush every ounce of her false confidence. "I wanted to talk to you about this morning," I continued. Her smirk widened. "Oh, the little accident? Yeah, sorry about that. Maybe next time you'll watch where you're standing." She actually chuckled at her own cruelty. I let out a soft laugh, shaking my head slowly. "You know, that's interesting. Because accidents usually don't come with insults like, 'You're a nobody.'" Her smile faltered. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. And that was when I leaned forward, slid the nameplate across the desk so she could see it clearly, and said, "By the way, Jessica, I'm not just your coworker. I'm your new boss." The color drained from her face. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. I let the silence stretch until it became unbearable. Then, with a calmness that masked the storm inside me, I added, "So tell me, what do you think happens to employees who humiliate their manager on her first day?" Jessica shifted in her chair, her bravado slipping fast. I could see her brain scrambling, trying to figure out a way to crawl out of the hole she'd dug for herself. But the silence in that office was heavy, and I let it press down on her until she finally stammered. I didn't know. I thought you were just..." "Just what?" I cut her off sharply. My voice wasn't raised, but it was steady enough to pin her in place. "Just another face you could walk all over? Just another nobody you could humiliate?" Her eyes darted to the desk, the floor, anywhere but me. For the first time that morning, I felt a flicker of satisfaction. This was the woman who had laughed at me in front of everyone, who thought she could reduce me to nothing. And now, she was sitting across from me, afraid of what I might do next. I stood up slowly and walked around the desk, standing close enough that she had to look up at me. "Jessica, do you know what a toxic employee does to a team?" I asked softly, almost kindly. They rot it from the inside out. And I can't afford rot here. Her hands twisted nervously in her lap. Look, I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean it like that. It was a joke. A joke, I repeated, my tone flat. Funny. Because I didn't laugh. I paced a little, deliberately dragging out the moment. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to write a formal apology, not to me, but to every single person in this office who saw what you did. You'll admit it wasn't an accident. You'll own up to the fact that it was petty, cruel, and unprofessional. And you're going to do it today. Her jaw dropped. What? That'll make me look like the person you are? I cut in again, leaning against the desk. Yes. Exactly. I could see the panic settle in her eyes. This wasn't what she expected. She feared embarrassment more than anything else, and now, I was giving her a dose of her own medicine. And this was only the beginning. By the time Jessica left my office, her confidence had shriveled down to nothing. She muttered something about needing time to think about it, but I didn't give her the luxury of delay. You have until 3 p.m., I told her firmly. And don't even think about sending a half-hearted apology. If I don't see sincerity, we'll move to a formal write-up. Your choice. She nodded stiffly, eyes down, and walked out without her usual strut. The door closed behind her, and I finally exhaled. My hands were still trembling, not from fear, but from the surge of power I had just claimed back. The rest of the office was buzzing. I could feel the curious stares, the whispered conversations. They didn't know what had just happened behind closed doors, but they sensed something had shifted. That suited me perfectly. Let them wonder. Let Jessica stew in her own dread until her humiliation became public. At exactly 2:58 p.m., my inbox pinged. It was her email, addressed to the entire office, subject line, apology. I opened it, scanning the words. For once, she didn't lace her sentences with sarcasm or excuses. She admitted to deliberately spilling her coffee on me. She admitted to insulting me. And she admitted it was wrong. Then she wrote something that made me smile. It was cruel, unprofessional, and I embarrassed not just Claire, but all of you by creating a hostile environment. I take full responsibility, and I will do better. I hit send to all with a single click. Within seconds, the office was quiet, so quiet I could hear the hum of the air conditioner. People began glancing at me differently, their expressions shifting from dismissive to respectful. They realized I wasn't someone to push around. And then, almost like clockwork, small nods of acknowledgement started happening. One of the junior designers passed my office and gave me a quick smile. Another muttered, "Good call." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But I knew right then, I had earned my place. And Jessica? She had just learned the first lesson in fear. The next morning, I walked into the office with my head high. No one dared laugh this time. The usual chatter at the cubicles dimmed when I passed, and I noticed something different in their eyes, curiosity mixed with caution. They were testing me, waiting to see if what happened with Jessica was a one-time fluke or the beginning of a new order. I didn't waste the opportunity. I called a team meeting for 10 o'clock sharp. Everyone shuffled into the conference room, some avoiding eye contact, others sneaking glances at me. Jessica came in last. She didn't have her usual smirk. She sat quietly, her shoulders drawn in, as if she was hoping to disappear. I stood at the front, looking over the group. I know change can be uncomfortable, I began. I know some of you probably doubted whether I was the right person for this job. And I don't blame you, new leadership always brings uncertainty. A few people nodded slightly. I had their attention. But what I won't tolerate, I continued, my voice firm, is disrespect. Not toward me. Not toward each other. This is a workplace, not a high school cafeteria. If you want to thrive here, you treat people with professionalism and basic decency. And if that's a problem for anyone, there's the door. The room was silent. I let the weight of my words hang in the air. Then I softened my tone, leaning forward slightly. That being said, I didn't come here to rule by fear. I came here because I believe this team can do incredible things. You're talented. You're creative. And with the right leadership, I know we can hit goals none of us thought possible. That got them. I saw sparks of interest, even a hint of pride. Jessica shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her face tight. For once, she wasn't the center of attention. The spotlight had turned away from her, and landed on me. I walked out of that meeting knowing I had planted the seed. They were starting to see me not just as the new boss, but as their leader. And Jessica? She was beginning to realize her power was slipping. For a little while, it seemed like Jessica had learned her lesson. She kept her head down, answered emails on time, and even forced a tight smile whenever we crossed paths. But I knew better. People like her don't just change overnight, they simmer, plotting their next move. It didn't take long for her true colors to show again. One Thursday afternoon, just before a major client presentation, I noticed something strange. The slideshow we'd been perfecting for weeks was missing entire sections, our strongest data points, gone. At first, I thought it was an accident, maybe a file error. But when I checked the edit history, there it was, Jessica's name, logged in late the night before, deleting slides. She wanted me to fail. The thought made my blood boil, but instead of exploding, I smiled. Because this time, I had proof. I quietly restored the presentation from the backup, double-checked every slide, and went into that meeting fully prepared. The client loved it. We secured the contract, and the room buzzed with excitement. My team looked at me with genuine pride, and Jessica sat there, silent, her face pale as stone. Afterward, I called her into my office. Again. She tried to play innocent. I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe it was a glitch. I turned my monitor toward her and clicked the history log. Her name glared back at her in black and white. She froze, her lips parting but no words coming out. Jessica, I said calmly, you've made two very big mistakes. The first was underestimating me. The second was thinking you could sabotage me without consequence. Her eyes widened. She was cornered, and she knew it. I leaned in, lowering my voice. If you want to keep this job, you're going to do exactly what I say. And trust me, I haven't even begun to make you sweat. For the first time, I saw fear fully settle in her expression. And that was exactly where I wanted her. The morning after the client presentation, I gathered the entire team for a quick debrief. The air was different this time, lighter, energized. People were excited about the new deal, already throwing around ideas for next steps. I stood at the head of the table, listening, smiling, but also steering the conversation just enough to keep the momentum alive. And then I did something deliberate. I want to thank everyone for their hard work, I said, scanning the room. This win wasn't easy. We had some setbacks, but we overcame them because of teamwork. I paused, letting that word sink in. Teamwork. My eyes flicked briefly to Jessica, who kept her gaze fixed on the table. I didn't call her out by name, not yet. But I didn't have to. The rest of the office had noticed her sudden silence, her lack of contribution, and the way she avoided looking at anyone. They were starting to put the pieces together on their own. After the meeting, a few people lingered behind. One of the junior analysts, Mark, approached me hesitantly. Hey, Claire. I just wanted to say, it's nice having a manager who actually stands up for the team. It feels different. Better. That small comment meant everything. It was proof that respect was taking root. Meanwhile, I kept Jessica close, but not too close. I gave her assignments, but ones that required her to collaborate with others. No solo projects. No opportunities to sabotage from the shadows. Every task she touched now had eyes on it. She hated it. I could see the frustration in the way she clenched her jaw during meetings, the way her pen tapped furiously against her notebook. She wasn't used to being sidelined, forced into the background. But the more she shrank, the more I grew. The office was slowly rallying around me, not out of fear, but out of trust. And Jessica? She was becoming exactly what she once called me. A nobody. It was a Friday afternoon, the kind of day when everyone was itching to wrap things up and head out for the weekend. I had just finished reviewing reports when I heard raised voices from the common area. At first, I thought it was just office chatter, until I heard my name. Claire isn't even that good of a manager. Jessica's voice cut through the room like glass. I stepped out of my office, calm, collected, and walked toward the group. Half the team was gathered around, some standing, some frozen at their desks, all with that look people get when they know something explosive is about to happen. Jessica was standing by the printer, her arms crossed, her voice sharp. She acts like she's perfect, but she doesn't know this company like we do. She waltzed in here and thinks she's in charge of everything. I stopped a few feet away, my arms folded loosely, watching her dig her own grave. When she noticed me, her words faltered. But it was too late, everyone had seen her little outburst. I gave her a few seconds of silence, letting the tension stretch. Then I spoke. "You're right, Jessica," I said evenly. "I don't know everything about this company yet. But I do know something about leadership. Leadership means showing up, doing the work, and supporting your team. It doesn't mean sabotaging projects, humiliating coworkers, or tearing people down." Gasps rippled through the group. Her face turned red. "Because here's the truth," I continued, my voice steady. "I don't need to prove myself to you. I'm here to lead. And if anyone here can't handle that, they're free to walk out." The room was silent. Then, slowly, one of the designers said, "She's right." Another chimed in, "Yeah, Claire's been the only one pushing us forward." Jessica's jaw tightened, but she didn't fire back. Not this time. She just grabbed her bag, muttered something under her breath, and stormed out of the office. And for the first time, the entire room looked at me not with doubt, not with curiosity, but with loyalty. Jessica didn't return to the office the following Monday. Or Tuesday. I thought maybe she was too embarrassed after her outburst, maybe she'd finally quit. But on Wednesday morning, an email landed in my inbox that made it clear, she wasn't done. The subject line, "Formal Complaint." I opened it and immediately felt my jaw tighten. Jessica had filed a report with HR, accusing me of harassment, intimidation, and creating a hostile work environment. She twisted everything, our private conversations, the apology letter, even the confrontation in front of the team. She painted herself as the victim, claiming I was out to destroy her career out of personal spite. It was laughable, but dangerous. HR doesn't ignore complaints, even when they're baseless. The next day, I was called into a meeting with HR and one of the directors. Jessica sat across from me, her expression smug again, like she thought she had finally regained the upper hand. I didn't flinch. Instead, I calmly presented everything I'd collected, the file logs showing her tampering with the presentation, the emails she'd sent dripping with sarcasm and passive aggression, even witness accounts from team members who had seen her behavior firsthand. And then I pulled out the trump card, a printed copy of her apology email to the entire office. This, I said, sliding it across the table, wasn't forced. It was her choice. Her own words. She admitted to what she did. Jessica's face drained of color. The HR rep scanned the page, their brows furrowed. The director leaned back, looking between us, and finally said, "It seems pretty clear who's been fostering hostility here." For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself a real smile. Jessica thought she had set a trap for me. But instead, she had walked right into mine. The meeting ended with a silence that said everything. Jessica sat stiffly in her chair, her face pale and lips pressed into a tight line. HR had seen enough. The director didn't need to raise his voice or deliver a dramatic speech, his quiet disappointment cut sharper than any words. "Jessica," he said, his tone calm but final. We take integrity very seriously here. Deliberately sabotaging company projects and targeting coworkers is unacceptable. We'll be moving forward with disciplinary action. Her head snapped up. Wait, what? You can't be serious. She's twisting everything. The HR rep cut her off. We have evidence. And we've spoken to others on the team. Your pattern of behavior is very clear. Jessica's mouth opened and closed like she wanted to argue, but there was nothing left for her to cling to. She had cornered herself. Effective immediately, HR continued, you're suspended pending further review. We'll notify you of the next steps. The room went cold. Jessica looked at me with pure hatred, her eyes burning like she wanted to set me on fire right then and there. But hatred couldn't save her. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. When the door clicked shut, the director turned to me. His expression softened. Claire, I know this wasn't the easiest start for you. But I want to be clear, we support you. You handled this with professionalism, and that's exactly the kind of leadership we need here. I nodded, offering a polite smile, but inside I felt something far stronger than relief. I felt vindicated. The word spread through the office faster than wildfire. Jessica was gone. The same people who once looked at me with doubt now stopped by my office with small words of encouragement. Good job today, we're glad you're here, about time someone held her accountable. It wasn't dramatic applause, but it was better. It was respect. And it was mine. Jessica was out of the picture. Or so I thought. For a few weeks after Jessica's suspension, things finally started to feel normal. The office was calmer, lighter. People joked more during lunch breaks, collaboration flowed, and even late nights didn't feel heavy because the toxicity had lifted. I started to believe the storm had passed. But storms have a way of circling back. One evening, as I was leaving the office, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Enjoy the throne while you can, Claire. Queens fall hardest. My stomach dropped. I didn't need to guess who it was. The next day, I found out just how far Jessica was willing to go. A recruiter I knew from another agency called me privately and asked, Claire, is everything okay? Word is going around that you were investigated for harassment at your company. My heart sank. Jessica was spreading lies, taking bits of the HR complaint she herself had filed and twisting it into gossip that I was the one under review. It was vicious, and it was spreading fast. But here's the thing about Jessica, she always underestimated me. What she didn't realize was that I had already built a reputation outside of this one office. I had clients who trusted me, industry contacts who respected me, and colleagues who had seen my work ethic firsthand. So instead of panicking, I documented everything. The text messages. The rumors traced back to her old friends in the industry. Every thread connected. Then I did what Jessica never expected, I went public, but in my own way. At our next team meeting, I addressed the whispers head-on. There are lies being spread about me outside this office. I want you all to know the truth. I faced harassment here, I handled it professionally, and the evidence cleared me. What's being said now is nothing more than a desperate attempt to discredit me. My voice didn't waver. And when I finished, the team didn't look at me with suspicion. They looked at me with solidarity. Jessica was trying to burn my reputation. But all she was doing was giving me more fuel to fight back. By the time Jessica's lies began making the rounds in the industry, I already had a plan. She thought gossip could destroy me, but she forgot that in advertising, just like in life, receipts matter more than rumors. I spent that weekend gathering every piece of evidence I had. Screenshots of her sabotage in our files. The text she sent me about Queens falling. Copies of her apology email and the HR report that cleared me. Piece by piece, I was building a portfolio of truth that painted the real picture of who Jessica was. Then I made one strategic move. I reached out to a trusted client who also happened to sit on the board of an industry networking group. Over coffee, I laid it all out, not in a bitter, vengeful rant, but in a calm, factual presentation. "I know rumors are going around," I said, sliding my folder across the table, "and I need you to see what's really happening." He read in silence, his eyes widening at the evidence. When he finished, he looked up at me and shook his head. "Claire, she's finished. Nobody's going to want to work with her after this." And he was right. Within a week, I started hearing the shift. Recruiters who had been skeptical before were now calling me with new opportunities. Clients sent me messages of support, praising the way I had handled a difficult situation with grace. Meanwhile, word spread that Jessica had been blacklisted from 2 agencies after her lies were exposed. It wasn't me who ruined her. It was her own actions, finally catching up to her in the one place she thought she had power. For the first time since this war began, I didn't just feel respected. I felt untouchable. And I wasn't done yet. It was a rainy Thursday evening when I saw her again. I had stayed late at the office, finishing up a proposal, and by the time I stepped outside the building, the streets glistened under the streetlights. That's when I spotted her, Jessica, leaning against the side of the parking garage like she'd been waiting for me. My first instinct was to walk right past her, but the look in her eyes made me stop. She wasn't smug anymore. She wasn't fiery. She looked desperate. "Claire," she said quickly, stepping forward. Her voice was low, urgent. "You've got to stop this. Please." I tilted my umbrella slightly, eyeing her. "Stop what, Jessica? You mean stop defending myself against your lies? Stop proving the truth?" Her jaw clenched. "You don't get it. Nobody will hire me. People won't even return my calls. I can't even get an interview at places I used to laugh at. Do you know what that feels like?" I let the question hang in the air, my mind flashing back to that first day, her coffee dripping down my dress, her sneering voice telling me I was a nobody. Oh, I knew exactly what it felt like. "Yes," I said simply. "I know." She flinched. Rainwater splashed against the pavement as she shook her head. "I made a mistake, okay? I was threatened by you. I thought if I knocked you down, I'd stay on top. But I didn't think it would go this far." I studied her for a long moment. She wasn't faking this time. She was unraveling, truly cornered. "You feared losing power," I said quietly, "and now you've lost everything." Her lips trembled like she wanted to argue, but nothing came out. She just stood there, soaked in the rain, broken in a way I had never seen before. And for the first time, I realized something. Revenge didn't just mean winning. Sometimes, it meant watching your enemy destroy themselves. After that rainy night, I didn't see Jessica again. She disappeared from the office, from the industry, from my world altogether. It was as if she'd been erased, leaving only the echoes of the chaos she had tried to unleash. But I carried the weight of it for a while. Revenge had tasted sharp, satisfying in the moment, but it left me asking myself who I wanted to be moving forward. I had won, there was no doubt about that. Jessica's downfall was complete. Yet I knew if I spent the rest of my career chasing enemies, I'd lose sight of the bigger picture. So I shifted my focus. I poured everything into my team. Instead of just managing, I led. I made it my mission to create the kind of workplace I wished I'd walked into on my first day, a place where people felt respected, valued, and protected. Slowly, the culture began to change. People spoke up more, shared ideas without fear of being ridiculed, and worked together instead of against each other. One Friday afternoon, months later, my team surprised me. I walked into the conference room for what I thought was another strategy meeting, only to find balloons, a cake, and a card signed by everyone. "Claire," the card read, "thank you for turning this office into something we're proud to be part of. You didn't just survive, you made us stronger." I stood there holding that card, my throat tightening. That was the moment I knew I'd done more than defeat Jessica. I had built something lasting. And as for Jessica, she became nothing more than a cautionary tale, someone people whispered about in past tense, a reminder of what happens when arrogance collides with real leadership. I didn't need to chase her shadow anymore. I had already stepped into the light. The day I truly realized it was over wasn't in a boardroom, or in a confrontation, or even in a moment of victory over Jessica. It was on an ordinary Monday morning, months later, when I walked into the office and saw my team already buzzing with energy. There was laughter near the coffee machine, 2 designers huddled over sketches, and an intern confidently pitching an idea to one of the senior analysts. The atmosphere was alive, collaborative, healthy. No fear. No pettiness. No Jessica. That's when it hit me. I had taken the place that once tried to break me and turned it into something better than I ever imagined. Later that day, during our weekly check-in, one of the newer hires raised her hand and said, "Claire, I just wanted to say thank you. I've worked at places where bosses only cared about results. But here, it feels like we're actually seen as people. That means more than you know." I smiled, letting the words sink in. That was the ending I never knew I wanted, not Jessica's destruction, not the applause of proving her wrong, but the quiet, steady validation that I had built something real. Revenge had started this story, but it wasn't how it ended. What truly mattered was that I didn't just outlast Jessica, I outgrew her. She had tried to make me feel like a nobody. But in the end, she became exactly that, while I became the leader I was always meant to be. When I locked my office door that evening, the city skyline glowing through the windows, I whispered to myself the words she had once spat at me with venom. "You're a nobody." And for the first time, I smiled, because I knew, beyond any doubt, I was somebody. The story of Jessica had ended. But mine was just beginning.